I've given you some ideas in the first three videos on creating emotional and inner foundations to deal with oppression from whatever source. And then we've moved into this idea recently in the last video about buying time so that you can start to try and plan changes to the way in which you interact with people who oppress you. Um, and then at that point you've got something to come back with. So they say we'd do this by tomorrow. And you'll say, well, actually, so now you're preparing to negotiate. You've thought about it, you've got some time, you've got some peace in yourself, and you come up with some reasonable response. It's a question of negotiating. Well, I think maybe we can do this. Give some reasonable reasons, okay? Make yourself extremely reasonable. So plan a response, plan something that you feel is self-respecting, and give some reasonable reasons. Um, and if you can find other people who you can persuade of those reasons first, who can support you. But even if you have to do it yourself, come back with your terms. Okay. Um, Now a spiritual leader is not going to quickly accept them. They might do sometimes, but they might not other times, and they might start to think that you're now becoming a difficult person to deal with. Okay. You're not doing what they say just like that. God says you've got to do this, and you're suddenly negotiating with me, whatever it is, or whatever emotional manipulation they're used to. Okay, so if they don't agree with you and they come back with again heavy demands, see if you can buy more time. Buy more time. Go back, get more time to go back into your inner refuge inside yourself, to plan the next responses. Okay. So you might not always be able to do that. Life is life. But the idea is to plan responses, because it's going to be difficult for any of us to suddenly be as strong in negotiations as these leaders. Again, we're often it's introverts that can't sort of pushed around by extrovert leaders who've got 101 things to do and very little time to give to you individually. So it's a question of making plans, buying time, and then coming up with a reasonable response. Okay. Um, and dealing with that in the moment, buying more time if necessary when they come back to you. Okay. And at some point they might start saying, look, you've really changed now. I used to be able to deal with you normally, and now you're a bit difficult or whatever. And it's good to have some plans of what to say then. Things like, you know what, I realized over the years I've become too much of a doormat. It's not it's affecting my self-esteem, my psychological health. You know, if you've been had to go to the doctors for depression or whatever, and you think, well, as I've got older, I've realized I have to stand up for myself a bit more and not let other people take charge all the time. And that's not incompatible with any of our common beliefs. And if you can find references to things that you do believe in common, religious sayings, spiritual sayings, customs and practices in your organization which you can use to back yourselves up if necessary, without going into too much detail. Just to give that idea that you're now a different person and you're looking after yourself. Just looking after yourself so that you can sustain sustain relationships longer, you know, um, and be happier. So, because nobody wants to be responsible for another person's unhappiness. Okay, it might not work if you're dealing with spiritual leaders. All they Mostly what they care about is control. Okay, and if you're standing up for yourself in a completely normal way, but you're actually threatening their control, they might not be reasonable anymore. So you can't you can't predict, you can't second guess everything that they will do. So and they can start to agitate against you, get other people against you. And again, you're going to have to start to use the same tactics against a wider group of people, who are coming against you. And the key is always to buy time, to not react in the moment, to plan reactions. Okay. Um, and maybe at some point when you're strong enough is to start to say no, no, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with that. And again, give reasons and give reasonable reasons. And if you can link those reasons to the custom and practice of your organization or your family or your employer, then do so. Okay. And really stand your ground. Stand your ground. And that might take some time to do. So you might have to pick your battles carefully to grow in strength and confidence before you start to say on certain things, it's not just negotiating it differently. It's no, this doesn't feel right to me. Make it personal about you. I'm uncomfortable with this. Doesn't feel right to me, rather than you're wrong, the organization's wrong. So you can come up with alternatives that that seem to achieve a similar goal but are more reasonable. Sometimes it's a question of treating other people right, and you really have to just say, no, we shouldn't do this to that person, it's not right. We should speak to them about it. We should deal with things in a different way. Controlling organizations are often very secretive, and have structures that seem to be God ordained or God given, but actually don't treat people properly. And so we need to be, if we start to realize that we're not being treated properly, other people aren't being treated properly, there's going to be some areas where we can just say, no, I'm just not doing that. And you're giving them a problem then. You're giving them, the leaders, a problem. They want to really make your life hell, or they want to accommodate you as somebody who they can't just expect to do everything that they ask. And if you notice in many organizations are very varied, spiritual leaders are very flexible. Once they start to realize people are resisting them, they fall back because they realize, well, they don't want to lose that person because that could be a bigger disaster than having them in the organization as a more assertive person. So I know from my experience that when I didn't really stand up to my spiritual superiors at all. I was a complete doormat the whole time, and that actually worked for me because it got me out of the organization sooner. So, but there are some people who negotiated a better deal for themselves by standing up for themselves and got other people to support them, and that reduced the level of oppression that they achieved, that they experienced. So most spiritual organizations will take every inch they can get, and it's up to you what those inches are. And if you're giving them every inch, it's a question of taking back your autonomy inch by inch, and going through these stages where you build up your inner strength, then you start to buy time so you can plan responses, then you start to negotiate different outcomes and different responses. You get pushed back again, buy time, prepare different responses to the point where you're actually really willing to say, no, I'm not comfortable with that. And if you do that gradually and slowly, you won't do it perfectly, you'll make mistakes, but hopefully you'll keep your composure, your poise, your maturity, and not react childishly, not react immaturely, because that's very easy then for them to deal with. And you won't get that right every time. So I'm giving advice really that it's based on experience that I didn't manage to produce when I was in my own controlling organization. I was aged 23 to 32, and I had major personal problems. So I couldn't really get there at that point. But I did negotiate later controlling environments more readily, but they didn't affect me quite as much. So, but if you're in a controlling environment you can't easily escape from, you're going to need to be gentle and patient with yourself, build yourself up internally first, and then make baby steps to grow in confidence and assertiveness to get a better deal for yourself. Okay. And as you do that, you'll grow in self-respect, self-love, compassion for yourself and for other people who are also fellow victims. So thank you very much for listening to this video series.